At least had that. Oh, I think we're going. Okay.
All right. I'd like to call this meeting of the Isle of Palms Environmental Advisory Committee to order and acknowledge that the press and public have been duly notified of the meeting in accordance with the Freedom of Information Act. In attendance today, we have all members except Grace Gergula, and she might join us later by Zoom. She can do that. First on the agenda is the approval of the previous meetings from March 10th. I believe Dr. Plunkett has a correction, or do we have to make the motion first? I have a correction from. I think we just asked if there are any corrections.
Yeah, that's fine.
And it's under the discussion of litter, and some of the information there is confused between Keep America Beautiful and Palmetto Pride. So I'm proposing that we eliminate a lot of that discussion. Just strike it from the minutes, and I will pass along the information to Douglas to give to Nicole.
So the first two paragraphs, page 3, item 4, litter, is that
Correct.
roughly what you're
Correct.
proposing to strike?
Yes. There's several sentences in there. I think we can
Okay,
strike it rather than correct.
okay. Got that.
All right. Is there a motion that we accept the minutes as corrected, amended?
I
Your
make a
motion?
motion that we accept the amended minutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, raise your hand.
I'll abstain. I was at the meeting.
Okay.
That was,
The motion passes.
so 7-1. How many there's, or 7 with 1 abstention?
Uh,
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Got it. Thank
7
you.
yeas and 1 abstention. All right. Next on the agenda are citizens' comments. We have Susan Hill Smith to speak to us.
Hi, this is different. I'm Susan Smith. I live at 23rd Avenue and on Isle of Palms. And I just wanted to say it's been fantastic to keep up with what you all are doing with the Environmental Advisory Committee and the energy that you brought to this. It makes my heart just happy to see all that you're doing and the progress that you're making so quickly. So thank you. And the work that you're putting into it. Thank you. Thank you. I am really here for Isle of Palms cleanup crew to kind of update you on what we have going on. And I really promise to be pretty quick about it. But there are some exciting things and some different things that we're doing this year. And just to recap, Isle of Palms cleanup crew is a grassroots organization that's not officially connected with the city, but I was on city council when we created it with Trina Limbach from Isle of Palms Beach Share Company. We're co-founders, and so we started that in 2018, and every year we were collecting and documenting about 23,000 to 26,000 pieces of trash that we were collecting. We are doing things a little bit different this year. We started with a sweep every other week during the spring this year, which is more frequently than we've done in the past during the, we'll say the shoulder season. So we've already had litter sweeps on Mondays on March 14th, March 28th, and April 11th. We have involved each time around 30 or 35 volunteers. We are picking up about 600 to 800 pieces of trash each time, which is actually a lot lower than we usually do in the heart of the season, when we will collect up to 2,000 pieces of trash with even a similar size group of volunteers. So that's mostly, I think, because the crowds haven't really reached their peak, obviously. And with the better weather, we will be picking up more trash because there will be more people. But hopefully, too, all of our efforts in education and changes that the city has made are helping to make the trash problem less, the litter problem. Hopefully, we're making an impact as well. Also, we are doing special welcome sessions during the spring, which have been great to, we have a nice space there that we are planning to turn into IOP conservation station between the restrooms and the showers at that main beach access in the 1100 block of Palm Boulevard. But the city has already kind of opened that up and created a good space for meeting and kind of connecting with people and explaining what we're all about. So that's been wonderful. And in the summertime, even though we're not going to be having continuing the welcome sessions, which are right now at 5:30 ahead of our 6 to 7 o'clock sweep, we are going to be working with a group from the Charleston County Library System. Their summer reading program is themed around ocean conservation. So they have reached out to us, and we're going to put on some special welcome sessions for young readers that they're trying to engage. So excited about that, because honestly, it's really as much about education and prevention, our program, as it is about documenting and picking up trash. It's about changing behaviors and finding solutions. And as you know, we have always worked with the South Carolina Aquarium to document exactly what we're collecting. The space that I just mentioned, we are making progress in turning that into IOP conservation station. But it's still, we have some things to take care of. First, we're working with the aquarium's design team for some ideas about how we're going to, design that and build in educational components. Other components will include a fill-a-bag station, which we're working with Natasha Viswanathan, I hope I'm saying that correctly, a realtor in Mount Pleasant, who is bringing this concept where it's essentially a post with buckets and instructions that you can call up with a QR code or just see on their branding about anybody could take a bucket, pick up trash, dump, bring back for somebody else to do again. She has that already at Sullivan's Island. She has a post that she's worked with their town, has allowed, and is just getting started. And we're hoping to have that component at IOP Conservation Station, along with a no toys left behind bin that we may want to also have at some other areas, other beach access paths. But we'll talk more with the city about that. And I think that's about it. So our next sweep is on Monday, right as we're finishing up birthday weekend. So 5:30 welcome session, 6 to 7 sweep. Once we get to the summer, the sweeps will be every week from Memorial Day to Labor Day, but just 6 to 7. The welcome sessions are more of a spring thing. So, and I know this isn't a place for questions, but you know where you can reach me. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Susan.
Great. Well, under old business, the first thing is wildlife. Consider ordinance prohibiting metal shovels on the beach. And as you remember, we were trying to keep beachgoers from leaving giant holes on the beach, and a lot of other beaches I have found out along our coast have done this very successfully. The one question that came up with this ordinance was about exceptions for city workers, like Public Works, of course, DNR volunteers, such as Turtle Team members who are authorized by DNR, also need to have an exception because we often have to bury small dead turtles once we've done the reports on them, and that we carry a small, short metal shovel for that. Also, there was a question about those people who are looking for metal detector guys, because they do carry a long shovel and they just scoop a little bit up. Douglas, do you think it would be advisable to accept those people as well?
Well, so just a little bit of background on what's in your packet. There's 3 examples, Kiowa, Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach are all in the packet.
And now all of Georgetown County beaches, which there are about 5 of them along there.
Yeah, okay. So, that's the first page in your packet, and that's dealing with this. And then the second page is the current city's ordinance. That's the page that starts section 5-4-15. And then at the end of that, so I've included the entire section so you can see it in context of the code. But we would be proposing, or the way it's written here, we would add D, and you can see D, and it's basically Myrtle Beach, I think. No, Hilton Head. It is really a carbon copy of Hilton Head's. And it does have in there an exemption for the turtle team, city employees, work related to beach preservation, obviously when the contractors show up, and others approved by the city are exempt from the application.
Yeah, I don't know about that, what they do about metal detector guys.
And I don't, and maybe it was a sidebar conversation at the last meeting, but that those people actually, I think it was Nicole, either her son or her husband does it. And it's actually a sieve. It's a sieve on a swivel. So it does kind of scoop it, but then it instantly drops through.
And it's not a shovel.
So I would say that's not a shovel.
Oh, because I thought I had seen them carrying a big long shovel.
And maybe some do, maybe some don't, but according to Nicole, that's this kind of screen. It's really more of a screen than a shovel, and it definitely doesn't leave a hole. But the specific standards of that code, and I don't know, I guess I have a question really about the length. It gets very specific about it would have to be wood or plastic, and it would have to be less than 30 inches. If you noticed, others had a shorter, and I'm not familiar enough with those toys to know if there's some logic to it, but I trusted that. So some of them are 14 inches, some of them don't have any size limit, but we put 30 in there. And then it requires that the sand be restored to its natural condition no later than 30 minutes prior to sunset, which I think is a good provision to just have people clean up their hole, and then never more than 12 inches. So if you had a very aggressive digger with a small wooden shovel, still limit them to 12 inches, which I think is probably the spirit of what the group wants to achieve.
Question.
Yeah.
Wooden shovels, I'm used to plastic. I can't say that I've seen wooden shovels.
You talk about the handle.
I don't know. That's what's not clear.
Yeah, so a wooden shovel of that size would also be allowed. I assume that was kind of, I know that kids' toys, you kind of have you have plastic versions, and then you do have wooden ones. I don't know that I've ever seen one, but that was in there
from ones with plastic handle, plastic blade, and then a piece of wood about this big. But
between them.
That's probably.
Yeah, I mean,
That might be what's being
yeah.
referenced.
So is it clear enough in here that, does it say anything about metal in here?
So it just says nothing other than wood or plastic would be allowed. So it's kind of by omission that if it's metal or carbon fiber or something else.
30 inches is what about?
Yeah,
That's a big shovel. I mean, I'd be inclined to go a little smaller.
So the other one.
You're walking out there with a 30-inch shovel. You're digging down to the core. I don't know, though.
I don't know. I think those children's shovels are about this long. So I think it's about right. Yeah.
30 is about,
I wouldn't object to that.
to bring it down to the smaller.
No.
I think
keep it.
Mary's
Keep it at
saying
30?
leave it.
There,
There must be some logic to the number 30. And I think that's probably, it. You have the tiny things and then you have kind of the
Yeah.
kid
fine.
size. But
Right.
larger.
I would err on the side of just sticking with the established one that we're looking at Hilton Head as an example of.
Yeah, I think Hilton was a good one. I like that we picked that example.
Very
I
good.
just had there was 2 questions are all I had. But I thought the Hilton Head was fit who we are, what we want to be. That's all the question, everything I had to say.
Do we need to vote on it?
So yes, if you all would, if you support the red line as presented to you, you would make a recommendation that city council adopt the ordinance as presented. So that would be a motion and an action from the group.
Before the vote, I just want to, you talked about how the last time this was tried, there was sort of a media kerfuffle over it. Just maybe briefly thinking in the interest of avoiding a media kerfuffle, I just did some looking up with the Hilton Head announcement and it looks like the news covered it pretty straight. So I would probably find, but maybe like thinking as we release this of just having like a quick press release or just releasing something to the news that makes sure it's reported on in a way that's favorable or at least not disfavorable.
And we'll explain that it's not cutting edge. It's been done
Right.
successfully, many other areas of the state. Seems like, and Doug, you may not have been here, but this did come up and it's now maybe been 20 years ago and it made its way up to CNN and the tagline was South Carolina community is killing kids' ability to create sandcastles on the beach. That was kind of the, and I think we talked about it last month, that it's now been done so many times and people may have, may not come off as so out of left field, but I think the idea is good of just trying to get ahead of that, because that's certainly what happened. It, made its way on to an agenda thinking it was a harmless thing and everybody would get it, but they didn't.
Yeah, I think, does the council do press releases like that?
They
Issue a
do
statement?
periodically, yeah.
I think that would be good to
Yeah.
frame it, because then you
And
can
then
say
they
this
can
is for
explain.
conservation, this is
Right.
wild habitat,
Those safety things, people.
safety, I'm a jogger, I mean, I'm tripping.
Yeah.
So I think with the framework around it, I think that's a great idea.
So that might be part of the recommendation. Recommend council approve the ordinance as drafted and recommend that a press release be done to explain the benefits and the purpose of the amendment. I think that's makes good sense.
So moved. Yeah, I was gonna say, who would like to second it?
I'll second it.
Doug? All right.
I'll go on the record as the whole killer. Creativity of children is at jeopardy in the world.
So,
never
all
vote
in
again.
favor, raise your hand.
Okay, that will probably go through the Public Works Committee will be the natural progression of it.
Okay.
So it'd go from here to there and then up to full council as an ordinance. So I'll keep you posted on that progress as it goes along.
Thank you so much.
You can hear people saying, where will I put my cigarette butts now?
Yeah, that's really committee. I'd also like to say that we, after talking to the people at Audubon, South Carolina, I made a minor change in the Shorebird card that's going to be available to tourists. They said that having that phone number on there, they advised instead having their website that has all the information that people need, because they said there might not be anybody answering that phone at the time a tourist calls, and that way they could 24 hours a day, the tourists could go back to the hotel and, look up all the information about the shorebirds. So I changed that to the address that they recommended. Also about the stickers, that we were going to also try to get the ATAX people to fund to go in all the rental front beach houses about the Lights Out program and the Lights Out ordinance that is in effect on the Isle of Palms. That is kind of a time sensitive thing and it's so cheap. I mean, it's $20, $30. So the turtle team is just gonna
Just
fund
do that.
We'll
Okay.
take that out of our recommendation and just go with the rack card. I do have the quotes from the printer that does all the Turtle Team things, and they always give us a good price. And also price from Staples about plastic holders to put them in. These would be at the hotels.
Those are the racks.
And
Yep.
rack cards, holders, and not just for the hotels, but since we can get enough, we can put them at the check-in desks at all the rental, short-term rental companies.
So is that expense also something that Turtle Team's going to do, or is that going to go?
No, I
That's
think that could be bundled with the printing of the cards, which is here.
and the plan would go for that to go through the accommodations tax
Yes.
committee. Okay.
Yes, we would like to give both of those to them.
So
Now,
the stickers just came out.
the stickers
that's
are
how the-
being printed now.
now,
We've
and that
taken
comes
that
out of it.
Turtle Team's gonna pay for that. Yeah. Yeah, I think that makes more sense because we need to have those real soon in May, and we need to wait for the committee to meet and vote on it and everything. I think that makes more sense. And it's such a very small expense. We don't mind doing that.
Mary, I'm sorry, can you refresh my memory? Did we say that we were maybe going to redesign the handouts? I can't remember.
Well, Belvin had some suggestions, but everybody
Well-
on my committee was happy with it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let's leave it then.
Yeah, I thought it was readable. Unless you have something you really want to change, because they haven't gone to the printer yet.
When would be the deadline for?
Yes, could you do it a week in this next week?
Yeah, I can take some time early next week to fill around with it. And if they
Okay.
like that more, they can print that. If not, they can just go with the original.
All right, all right. And I would like to go on record as commending our Isle of Palms Animal Control Officer, Ryan Warren. I have been impressed with him. I went to the Shorebird Stewards training meeting at the Property Owners Beach House, and Ryan was there and sat through the whole thing, and Mayor Pounds and I both went. And then Ryan came to the Turtle Team training at my house and stayed for that whole thing. So he is very well educated and very enthusiastic
Oh, that's great.
about helping the wildlife on the Isle of Palms. And I would just like to say how impressed I am with
I will pass that along. Thank you.
him. Okay. That's all I have for wildlife unless. Anything else?
I know.
Okay.
Have it kicked at the high area.
Right, right. Okay, next is a water quality, discuss water keepers meeting. Who would like to handle that?
So I will start it off, and though Belvin and Jonathan were there, so they can fill in, but we did have a meeting. Doug had a conflict, but it was the water team with the water keepers representative. The hope or the goal of that meeting was to try to get a handle on getting kind of a strategy for looking at the water quality on the back of the island and I guess on the front of the island. That is really in that group's wheelhouse. It's what they do. And I would say that we had a very useful meeting. We talked about what they're doing in other communities. We did, and they do really a lot of the meeting centered around the testing that they do. They go and they take water samples, they test, they find, what contaminants are in those waters. We asked if they would consider adding the backwaters on the Isle of Palms to their list of properties or areas that they're testing. And they indicated that just geographically, they're on such a small window to get out. They like to do it, while it's raining or when it first rains. They like to get out, get the water samples. They have to keep them cold, get them to the lab. I did kind of take the meeting. My impression of the meeting was they felt that the indicators were such that the water quality probably wasn't bad. I think they had, they kind of talked about how close we are to the ocean and the flushing and where they're really seeing bad problems. And they gave some examples on John's Island or James Island and Shim Creek area where they were seeing high contaminant levels. So long story short, they basically said that they would not they just couldn't agree to testing behind the Isle of Palms. But we talked about ways that we may be able to do that on our own. And I was hopeful that we could do that, find a way to get a third party to do that, to take testings, samples. The other useful takeaway for me was their suggestion that we partner, and we're already in a partnership with Charleston County for our, it's called our NPDES compliance. That's part of the Clean Water Act. And they handle, they do a lot of work for us already to handle that program. And I think they could pretty easily give us suggestions of how we could better test that water to find out what's going on back there. So we tried. I was out of town last week, had some scheduling conflicts, but we're trying to get a meeting with the group and the county personnel to have that meeting, see what the county can do for us. And I think that we'll just continue working towards really figuring out what the contaminant levels are back there and coming up with suggestions of how we can improve that. That was my takeaway. You all have anything to add or different takeaways?
Yeah, so that was similar to my takeaway, which is that they aren't going to be the ones to do it, but they do recommend, if we are curious about the water quality of the intracoastal waterways, our back waterways, to hire some engineers to do a sampling plan. He gave us information on the financials too. What was it? Like one site, about $400 per event for testing was what I wrote down. And you're going to want to test a couple of times to get a good sense of it. And he also pointed to the discharge areas is where we would want to be testing. So, we sort of know where to test, about how much it would cost to test. And so it'd just be a matter of either hiring engineers or having citizens do it. The reason to hire engineers is because that way that no one messed up along the way, or like less likely. But it's nothing that we can have some people do and send off to a lab in theory. But engineers would probably not mess up any step of that. So that was my main takeaway, that to get more data, we sort of have a path forward if we want to take it.
If I remember right, there was already an engineering company that we were working with.
Yeah, so GEL did our report, did a similar project for us, but it's now been 20 years ago. We reached back out to them more recently. The guy who did it with GEL has now moved on, but he's still kind of in the business. I think he would be, if we were to not be able to find a solution through Charleston County, I think that would be kind of the natural next person in line to come up with a plan and a strategy to get that information.
I think one of the other takeaways I took from talking with Charleston Waterkeepers was that there would be some value or would shed some light on what might be going on with the septic systems. I think previously what they found was a lot of animal DNA or feces, but the way he described it, the way that different, storm waters rise or the tides rise and fall, that you still can have some of the things from the septic fields that could find their way into the waterway. And I'm not a water expert, but I'd be, curious to see, what kind of testing that engineering company recommended. And the thing we raised was whether or not there'd be any utility in doing any kind of drinking water assessment, as it's coming onto the island. Are we getting what we think we're getting, or is there any points downstream we should look at for drinking water or not? But I think that'd be something that we could explore with whatever engineering companies we wind up talking to about these different sampling ideas and options. That's in their wheelhouse or not, and the utility of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't be there, but this is an area that I've done professionally with engineering firms, did a lot of remediation sampling work. So, I'll be in a better position to participate in the next meeting. But, things we do want to look at is where the drainage ditches are, where the outfalls are, and then the various parameters you're looking for, fecal coliform, total coliforms, those are usually indication of fecal matter. And then we may look at nutrient levels. We aren't an industrialized island, so I don't know that we're going to see many priority pollutants. And you typically, unless you thought you had sources of priority pollutants, you normally wouldn't the sample for those, where you may do them, periodically just to get a baseline, so you know if something happened. But
Can you give us an example of a priority pollutant?
oh yeah, I'm sorry. So the EPA has identified 129 different chemicals that are priority. The benzene is a priority pollutant. And then you have in the priority pollutants, you have the priority pollutants, and you also have under the Safe Drinking Water Act, you'll have what they call the I guess they're the primary and secondary, and they're the parameters for which there are maximum contaminant levels, which you have to be below to drink. So you test the drinking water is generally tested for those. And if you exceed those and you go on boil notices, they have to take action. So, but there's standard lists of parameters, chemicals, or other indicators that there are usually US EPA test methods. So you just identify the test methods, which will then tell you how big the container is, how long you can hold it before it has to be analyzed, and then the labs that you use typically will understand the procedures because they're identified either in the standard methods or in the EPA sampling books.
Sure.
So it's a fairly, but Belton, to your point, I do think that if we're going to do something and we think that it's going to, and we want it to stand the test of scrutiny, using a third-party engineering firm isn't a bad idea. We could have a mix of them and volunteers, let them draw up the plan, give us the procedures, and we could do a combination of their labor and our labor to keep some of the costs down. I wouldn't mind going mud bucking again. It's been a while.
And Andrew had suggested focusing on bacteria in our sampling. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about fecal coliform and total coliform, there's specific types of bacteria that are related to feces, essentially. And there are specific types. And so what you're doing is analyzing for a specific type that would indicate, and that's what would tell you if you've got septics. What you'll see sometimes is like if you look at the drainage ditches, if there's drainage ditches that are by some of the streets that have a lot of septic, you might sample in the drainage ditch after a heavy rain, where you're getting flushing that's actually occurring. You're getting what they call discharge into the drainage ditch. You sample then. If you see levels of high coliform then you get indication that your septics are could be leaching out into, and if they're getting into the drainage ditch, it's going to continue to go out into the inlet.
Right.
So that's.
I just found my notes. Andrew said it'd be a few $1,000s for a decent study. So that was the cost estimate.
Yeah, the samples, like a fecal coliform sample is like $20, $50. Even like if you had to do a full scan of priority pollutants, that would get you up to about $400. Typically, we take 1 or 2 samples per sampling point. Depending on how we will look at it, if we're doing it based on time, we may do grad and composite. A composite sample is you maybe put a sampler in that's taking the water over the course of the stormwater event and getting an aggregate of it. So you're getting a complete picture of all the water that's flushing during the event, not just one particular moment in time. So these are all things that that's where I think an engineering firm would be beneficial, because I'm rusty on this stuff. And I think it'll put a study we do a little beyond reproach if we use a certified lab and an engineering firm as a guide. But I think, what we could do is lay out some objectives, lay out a plan, and then from that, get a scope of work from 2 or 3 different engineering firms and pick the one that we think is most qualified and has the best price, and recommend that to the council, because we don't have a budget. We don't spend money.
Well, on that point, we did put a little bit of money. I didn't know exactly where to mention it in our meeting, but we are the city's in its budgeting process now, and I think it's 25,000 that we put in beginning July. So there will be, some money is just a placeholder for something like this, or whatever priority comes out of it. There should be a little bit of money to do some studies if we need to, if we want to.
Do we need to take any action on that?
No, I don't think so. I think
Right now,
that's just an update. It's a work in progress. We hope to kind of formulate a strategy and come back with a strategy to kind of move us in the right direction there.
Very good. What about update on drainage master plan?
Did you have some?
Well, I was just
I'm
going to
sorry.
suggest on this topic, I have found to be a great source of free, very eager labor, are grad students. Somebody might be looking for a
Yeah.
thesis or a PhD project. And so it might be a good opportunity to pull them in.
Yeah, Andrew with Water Keepers was very agreeable and seemed to think that, it could very easily be done by somebody with a certain level of care, and he kind of described the process and what it took, collecting the sample, having a control, I think he said, and then cooling it and getting it to the lab. He said he would come out, he would train, he'd show us how to do it if we got to that point. So, I think there's any number of ways if we wanted to just kind of get it for our own. I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to just kind of random sampling to see if there's something there initially. And if all indicators are that it's fine, maybe we go into kind of a cycle of every few years, but if we have a problem, that might be, or if it identifies a problem, that might be the time to start kind of drilling in and figure out what's going on. So I think, we'll just keep moving forward on it and seeing what we can figure out. But I think Andrew would agree that a knowledgeable person and a person with a certain level of skill could certainly do it out here.
Yeah, I'm happy to, like I said, I'm happy to volunteer and help in this capacity.
Do that. We already have it. Doug is there.
One more. Right,
So-
update on drainage master plan.
Yeah, so the only thing I would say on this is, since our last meeting, and as you'll recall, the city has Davis and Floyd. They're doing a great job in analyzing our existing stormwater system that is outside of areas that have already been studied, which is really from 30th Avenue to Breach Inlet is their primary focus. They have done the inventory of the existing system. They've identified a lot of problems already. Some of them are very easy fixes with clogged up drains and sand and pipes and things of that nature that our Public Works Department has and is already working on. Other parts will be big and expensive, and that's still being worked on. But part of that process is analyzing all of our development standards, coming up with recommendations. At a prior meeting, we indicated that once that process begins, we'll bring them to you and just, kind of as a touch point and talk to you all about what they're doing and what they plan to do and get some feedback on that. At one of the committee meetings, I believe it was the Public Works Committee meeting, a resident did come and say, he expressed concern about development, running water onto him, even with our current standards. And, we require drainage plans. We require the involvement of drainage professionals. Even with that, kind of following along with the codes, still kind of have problems. And he was attesting to that and requesting that the city continue to push on. I would say that is more of a water quantity issue. I mean, he felt like, it was so not really a quality. It wasn't dirty water. It wasn't probably an environmental concern, but it was certainly a quality of life issue and a problem for him. So that's at the forefront of that plan, and we'll continue to work on it. And I think this group will be interfacing in that process in the future.
The question, having been involved in a land development planning group and a land land use board before, a lot of times you'll have your standards for your lots, but people come in constantly with variances. What is the historical trend in terms of us giving variances? Because like I worked in the township I was in, it was 6 builders and 2 concerned citizens, and every variance was approved.
Yeah.
And we came in, the next group of us came in and said, look, variances are an exception. You're supposed to follow the laws. You're supposed to have the proper setbacks. You're supposed to keep your floor plans a certain way. You're supposed to, so we shouldn't just be giving variances away just because somebody wants a variance and you're not willing to stand your ground on the ordinances. So I'm just curious, because the houses are just getting humongous.
Yeah. So
I'm getting 2 offers a week.
Yeah.
From people that want to offer me a little more than 2 times what I paid for to knock it down and put up a $4 million house. And they're putting up, larger impervious areas that are going to generate more runoff. And, are we giving a lot of variances to people to allow that to happen?
We don't give any variances.
Okay.
The city does not. So from my personal perspective, the
And this is a
variance,
question. This is
yeah,
seeking knowledge.
the variances, the city it's through a Board of Zoning Appeals. They haven't granted a variance in probably 15 years. So
That's good.
there's really no variances granted, and that kind of word gets out. Other communities are loose with them. Some communities are tight. This particular community is very tight on variances, which I think is a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
I would say that you have a couple of things. I mean, the houses that are being built are almost always much larger than the house they replace. That in and of itself has an impact, in my opinion, on the system in the island and its ability to handle that. I think the council has taken over the years, and each year there's kind of a measured approach to keeping things in line with maintaining people's property values, but at the same time, trying to keep things kind of a lid on it as best they can. So they're trying to find a balance of allowing property owners to build what they want to build, but at the same time, protect neighbors. But if there's a weakness in my mind in the code, it does allow, it puts the onus on the builder to provide documentation, proof, certification that this is not going to adversely impact the neighbor, the grading plan, the drainage plan. Sometimes that gets completely followed from start to finish. And at the end of the project, the neighbor next door says, hey, I have a problem. Where at that point, the city is satisfied, all the codes have been met. And you really would have one owner kind of pitted against their neighbor. And that's kind of the way it ends now. I don't know that there's a clean way. If you have, it's a very, it's a complicated problem. And there may not be a perfect resolution because, some certain neighbors ever kind of see eye to eye on issues or agree as to what the contributing issue is. So we can use professional help on it and we'll see where it goes, but variances wouldn't be the problem. If anything, it's just kind of the gray area in which the development world operates and,
Sure.
the size of homes on relatively small lots on here with very aged infrastructure.
The elevations here are so small, so you do.
Right, very
you do-
flat,
you do
very
your
low.
grading contours in your plan, you submit it, and you maybe, you're talking of, 10 feet that has to be graded in a very small period.
Right,
And all you gotta do is they put the grass seed in over the side, and it rained heavy and the elevation went off, now it's flowing different.
right.
So it is very complicated.
Yeah, our public works department battles with it constantly. It'll build up just on the edge of the road, and then before you know it, you have kind of shin-high water.
But I think the idea of through the drainage, going back and looking at some of the development standards as it relates to what you said, water quantity. I think is a good
Yeah.
opportunity to make sure that we're using all the latest best practices in terms of impervious driveways, things to keep runoff.
Right.
minimize runoff, and so forth.
That do it for drainage?
I just have one other question. I know that we talked about these before. I've been distracted. I apologize, but the GEL report, I think you said that is available if we want
Yep.
to view it. And then some of the drainage work, is there an ability to see the reports or to come in and look at the plans?
The Davis and Floyd
Yeah.
work, yeah, we kind of have the inventory in I don't think it's an email, it's such a huge format. I don't know how it was brought to us on a drive, but could certainly get that to you. I think the GEL report, if it wasn't already emailed, I can certainly send it back out.
It
think you
might have,
emailed it.
and it
Yeah.
might have been before I had the IO.
Okay.
Could you resend?
Yeah.
that out again?
Yeah.
And then if there's a way to get, what I'd be interested in on the development, the master plans, is really being able to look at the plans and seeing.
Well, so right
seeing the
now,
The drainage flows. Where they have
done all the inventory of the existing system is done, which sounds like maybe what you want to say.
Yeah, and because that'll also help with the water sampling, because that's going to tell us where the drainage is, or where the outfalls are, where the low spots. And all that good stuff.
Yeah, we can get that to you.
Cool. Thank you.
All right,
Thanks,
what
Mary.
about the climate action resolution update?
So Councilman Bogosian is not here today, obviously, is at his son's wedding, but that, so the process for that recommendation for the benefit of the group, that recommendation goes from here through Public Works and then ultimately to City Council. At the Public Works Committee, there was a motion made to recommend it to City Council, and there was no second.
Really?
Councilman Bogosian is on that committee. And I think that he knows kind of that there's some sticking point, I believe, in there that he's aware of. So he made a motion or basically stated that he would like the opportunity between their last meeting and their future meeting to make those revisions or come up with suggested revisions that he felt like would give that resolution a path forward with council. I think that in his opinion and its current state, there were certain parts of it that would cause it not to be able to survive through the council process.
Interesting.
So I haven't seen what the revisions would be. When I get them, I'll forward them to you all and I'll just keep you in the loop as to how that progresses through the council.
Do you recall what those issues were? Or-
No, it basically, there was no discussion at the meeting. There was a motion made and then it went silent. And then he just said, I would propose that I try to make revisions, but that was all that was said.
We call that crickets.
Yeah, there's kind of crickets in the meeting. Yeah, he sent an email after the fact just saying, sorry he couldn't be here today. Assure the group I'll try to work through getting it into a format that would survive.
When is the next Public Works meeting?
It's early in, I don't have either of my Nicole or Amy, but it is early in May. I think I can get it pulled up here quickly.
And is his intention to update it for that meeting?
Yes. Yep. So I would, once I see what the revisions are, I'll send it forward to you all.
Do you think he would be all right with talking with the climate subgroup about?
I think he will. Yeah, he actually mentioned, I think I know he would be.
Okay.
I can relay that to him, an interest in doing that. And I know he'll be agreeable to that.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be good to just be able to talk about.
Yeah.
Well, at least it's good. He's not getting rocks thrown at his home or death threats. So that's good.
No,
So they're not totally, no, people aren't totally. Interesting.
I do know it's a pretty quick turnaround. We're 21st now. But
Right. I guess if maybe just sometime next week.
yeah,
we can talk.
yeah, it's the 4th, May 4th. So is that two Wednesdays? Might be 2 Wednesdays.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Yeah,
All right,
there's a little bit of time there.
okay. Are we ready to move on to litter and pollution?
Yep.
As you probably know, Sarah Lyles from Palmetto Pride and Keep America Beautiful was here from 3 to 4 o'clock and met with that working group. Who would like to talk about that meeting? Or would you?
I'll be glad to start, and Sandy and Molly and Mary was there too, Douglas, and Susan Hill Smith, who's done so much work on the island, and still with us. But so fill in if I forget anything, but we had a face-to-face and I feel very positive about the time we spent. There was a lot of clarity provided on how Palmetto Pride might be able to help with the existing groups, not trying to take anything over, but help the existing efforts on litter and cleanup. And importantly, she helped clarify the distinctions between the Keep America Beautiful program and Palmetto Pride, which is the South Carolina litter organization. And I think I know we all agreed that we're sitting around the table that at this point in our needs in this committee, that we don't need to move forward with an affiliation with Keep America Beautiful, which would involve organizational efforts, mission statements, board, bylaws, and we really don't see any of the benefits from moving in that direction. However, Palmetto Pride is already involved and has a lot of symbiosis with what we're trying to do on this committee, and benefits, including being able to get grants for some of our programs, like Susan's cleanup crew. And one of the other things we asked about was maybe getting some funding to help with a part-time environmental or litter officer to help enforce during high season. Many of the ordinances we have on the books, but they just don't have the staff to, or, you know, using some of the grant money to pay overtime to some of the beach patrol, things like that. So in summary, there are a lot of benefits to working with Palmetto Pride without going through with any of the costs and the paperwork. And they help with education and signage and other things as well. So that is something that this committee has done so far, I think, is, yeah, now we've got a forum and a clearinghouse for some of our litter efforts without any affiliated cost, and perhaps with some additional funding. Is there anything else that we should add from that meeting? Those of you that were there?
I think you covered it very well.
Okay.
Maybe the fact that there's a specific startup grant she was suggesting at first. Is that what? the figure was?
Yeah, you want to
Yeah,
explain
it
that?
was $5,000 to $10,000 depending on the population. But it was a startup grant for training of, do we still need the 6 people?
No,
No,
that was,
no. So this was just like a start grant from Palmetto Pride without all of the stipulations that you would need with the bigger campaign. That could help us.
And she also said that they really like to fund special projects, like some of the ones that Susan is working on. And that sounded really good.
And the 501c3 problem is resolved through Palmetto Pride. as
exactly.
well.
A lot of those questions that we had were about the affiliation with Keep America Beautiful and the national organization and the paperwork and the structure and the feedback and so
So
forth.
the big grants are going to go through the city.
Great.
So I think it was very positive, and going forward will help us. We can help them.
Fantastic.
Answered a lot of questions. She did.
For those who came early, thank you.
That's good. What about installation of cigarette canisters?
Yes, so since our last meeting, the Public Works Department has, maybe it's 4, I know it's several cigarette canisters in the front beach area. We mentioned last month too that they were going to dedicate an employee to Monday morning to servicing those. Among other duties, they were going to kind of do general cleanup in the area, but that was going to be added to their task. So those are up.
Are
They're
those
being,
on the street?
they
or-
are on the
Yeah.
street side. Yeah, he did confirm that they are on the street side and that there is a nearby no smoking on the beach sign. So the idea there would be that if you're walking towards the beach, you'd see the sign and then you'd see a canister and you would leave your cigarette before you got to the beach. So that was one of the recommendations of this group, and that's underway and hopefully be successful endeavor for the city. Hopefully help out down there.
Sounds good.
One comment that I wanted to make, I know that there was a concern about the size of the canisters. There are
They did-
canisters that are, they are called stand-up canisters. And so they are 40 inches tall and they hold up to 2,400 cigarette butts. So it's the same, it's still part of that surf rider group. It's just a little bit of a different design for the canister. So rather than affixing it to a board, it's just a stand-up canister that
On the ground.
sits in the ground. Yeah.
So the ones that and I think I reported on this, that they ordered them and they were about the size of a Coke can, which was not what they expected. They did order different, they returned those and they're not, I don't think they're that big, but they're kind of 2-liter Coke bottle size on a post.
They
Kind of
should-
at eye level, or
Yeah.
the ones that they have installed.
So the dimensions of the canisters are supposed to be 14 inches tall by 4 inches by 4 inches.
That's about what they've
Yeah,
installed.
and they hold up to 600.
Yeah,
Oh,
that's
cigarette
more, I
butts.
think, the standard size that
Yeah.
they installed.
And-
Where have they been installed so far?
At the front beach area
At the
only.
beach.
Yeah, it's kind of, what I would say is kind of there has been the question as to how they get serviced whenever this has come up in the past, and this was kind of the Public Works Department's solution as a trial to have this individual doing it, starting in the commercial district, seeing how successful it is, seeing how it goes. We thought that would be the most useful, most impactful area to start with. So they're out there, and not sure how frequently they're being used, but they're being serviced every week.
Is that information that we need to collect?
Yeah, I was just thinking the same thing. I was thinking like a data set.
Do we need to
Would the-
keep data? on
Gets in a
that?
trash receptacle. We like that, right?
I wouldn't collect it for our purposes, except that I think it would be good data to know how much people are using them.
Yeah.
And what, for your purposes.
Yeah.
To know whether they're effective.
It'll be
But it's not
interesting.
litter.
I mean, it'd be interesting to see the correlation between how much are going into those containers and what do the numbers look like on the beach? Because if you start seeing the numbers going down.
Yeah.
And it may be too much effort to get a direct correlation by asking someone to weigh them. Each cigarette probably has an average weight. You could just weigh it and say,
Yeah.
how many meters. But it'd be interesting to know, to see if there's a correlation, which you would think there would be.
Increased enforcement, then it would be good to see, are more people using the containers, because they're hearing that they're not supposed to.
Right.
So.
Well, I do know that, they were asked to just keep us informed if they're being used, if they're not being used at all, let us know. If once a week isn't enough, let us know. If they're overflowing after a week, keep us posted. If there's some 3 inches in the bottom of cigarette butts, we haven't asked that they count that, but I think we'll get useful feedback on the level of usage.
Right, and I wouldn't want something that would be burdensome
Right.
to public
And
works.
the
we-
summer will be the test.
Right.
I mean, right now, it's not crowded.
Right.
If it does work out, Sarah Lyle also mentioned that there was cigarette beds from Cono Pride.
They're free. I don't know
Park
who
benches too,
the butt,
which is
the
interesting.
butt champion is on the island, but it might be worth looking at what we can get for free. If, we haven't made any final decisions.
Yeah.
It might be good
I
information.
will tell you from the city's kind of administration standpoint, the cost of the canisters is really immaterial. It is the manpower to deal with them. I mean, that is always kind of our problem. So if this is successful and we have the manpower, I think they were $20 or $30 or something like that each. So I don't expect the cost of the canister to be the problem. It's going to be
Yeah, I'm
services.
just thinking in terms of the design and the fact that they're available and used in other beach communities.
I think that the design is pretty similar to what the surf riders do. The only difference is that they have the more creative signage that goes along with the canisters, which might draw people's attention to it and perhaps encourage use of it. But I do think that the ones that Palmetto Pride does are the little black canisters, but it's just the plain black canister.
Wouldn't it be great if before long we didn't need those canisters at all?
Do we have,
Blue smoke.
just a general question, are there right-of-way captains or a concept like that? that's
There,
already
there
used
was
on the
a
island before?
adopt a path program.
We call them right-of-ways.
Yeah.
What do they call? Are they called paths? Or
Yeah,
the
just
beach access,
adopt
the
a
beach
beach
access?
access, yeah.
Because I would wonder if in the future, if we do decide to deploy this, if there would be a way to create a volunteer program or that incentivizes volunteers to become a beach access captain, where maybe once or twice a week, they empty things out, they just check things. Maybe not everyone's going to volunteer, maybe not every beach access, but
That, I think that was one of our long-term solutions.
Okay.
And when we did the litter.
okay. And then just one last comment is, and Douglas, I sent it, I didn't know how to disseminate it with the email, but I found an article on Waste 360. It was the psychology of litter. And I forwarded it to your email, but I know you were out, so I forwarded it again. If you
Okay,
could just send it to the rest of the group, if anybody wants to read an article about the psychology of litter, I thought it was very topical for us all.
I will do that.
Thanks.
Right, is there any new business to come before the committee? I didn't know if you.
Well,
you're not
yeah,
ready
yeah,
to
so
blast.
there's something I like to raise on the waste side of things. There is a local company, Fisher Recycling, that does glass recycling. And most people don't know this, but right now, Charleston County is not actually recycling the glass that you send in. Which is, yeah, it's
On
shocking,
their
isn't it?
website, it says,
Yeah.
"Put glass, we will pick up glass." They don't say what they're gonna do with it.
Right, I
need
think
to
they're so
change
attached to
that.
the single stream model that they don't, it's a whole thing. But I mean, the structural change on that level I'd like to see, but until then, Fisher Recycling does do glass pickups. I've been talking with Elizabeth Fisher over there, and she put together a proposal to team up with the city of Isle of Palms on a pilot project where we can have a glass drop-off center on the island, and they would pick up the glass and recycle it. Two drop-offs, yes.
That's great.
So I was thinking maybe we could all review that proposal at the next meeting. Elizabeth Fisher herself could come in, answer questions, and we could discuss whether we want to pursue that proposal.
We can put that on
Yeah.
the agenda
I
for
I
the
certainly
next
will.
meeting.
Yep.
That's fantastic.
Good.
Yeah.
What is it? They just, Charleston just doesn't have a market for it, or they don't?
So
Or is it they don't have a methodology for separation?
they don't have the methodology.
Or the tech for separation?
Yeah, and they don't want to do a partnership with the private entity.
That's a great idea, though.
Yeah, I mean,
It's fantastic.
yeah.
Nice job.
The next meeting date is 4 PM Thursday, May the 12th, 2022.
One last question, if that works for everybody that date, I think, I hope.
It's 3 weeks from now, right? Is that too soon?
So we did push this meeting back because I was out of town last week. That gets us, the 12th gets us back onto schedule.
That's a
If it's
better
too
week for
soon,
me.
we could, I also wouldn't mind just going over my list of items for our next meeting. Be sure I didn't miss anything. But first of all, let's talk about that date. Is the date, is
I know
that too
I-
soon?
I know right now. In fact, I was working on it just before I came, which is why I was late. I may be at a conference in Houston, the 18th and 19th. So the 12th would be better for me. I've already missed one meeting and I feel bad about that. So I'd like to be able to have a chance to attend.
Anybody else object to the 12th? Sounds good. Looks like we're good, Douglas.
I'm
Put that.
in Florence. I may or may not make it, but I want to do it for my sake. So yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll be in Florence. I just don't know if I'll make it back in time. So I'll try.
And then from a new business, I wanted to suggest a discussion item maybe for the agenda. Today's Earth Day.
He's doing this.
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow is Earth Day.
Yeah, good point.
Do we have some, do we want to think maybe next year we do some sort of Earth Day celebration or something that starts to really, by a year from now, we'll probably have some initiatives that we started. That the town it might be a good time to maybe use Earth Day as a way of, I don't know, some sort of town event or city event.
Perhaps we could discuss that in May.
Yeah, that's just
Yeah.
just to open a discussion. It gives us a year to think about it. You know? That's just an agenda item for discussion.
Is
Has-
there?
Oh,
any
I'm
other-
sorry. I was just kind of on that. I mean, has this committee been announced in any way to residents?
Wasn't-
So I have
weren't they
two
gonna put
more.
something in the island
I have
line?
two more points of discussion. First is that I've been asked to get a picture of everybody after this meeting. So if you would, just stick around and that's still a work in progress. Belvin's gonna have to fix his hair. He's gonna- So yes, that's still to be done, and I want to send a photo to go along with that. Second question, I'm currently sending everybody, I think, the agendas and correspondence to 2 emails. Everybody should have an iop.net address and their personal address. I'm happy to keep it that way. If anybody wants me to drop one, you just let me know whenever, which one to drop. But those were my 2 final points, other than just, I wanted to recap, if I could, on items for the next month that I have. So that we have the metal shovel ordinance that's pushed out of this committee, will go through the council committee. Mary, I don't know from the racks, the stickers, and is there
No stickers, just rack cards and
rack cards?
holders.
Is that something that you would like to take through ATAX or?
That came from Robbie Berg from the Garden Club and the Exchange Club. I should check with her before we take that over, because she wanted to do that. And I don't
Okay.
know if she knows how to take something we've got the product finalized and the quotes.
Okay,
I
so
could
that's kind of
check
ready
with
to,
her and see if she wants me to
okay,
turn
so
that
just
over to her.
keep,
She was gonna manage that program.
Okay.
To take them to the hotels and the rental places.
so just let me know what we need to do for that
Yeah.
item,
I'll
and
talk to
we'll
her.
we'll handle that.
'Cause I don't want to steal that project from her. if she
Yeah.
wants that for her.
The water group, we still have a meeting to be set up with the county's public works on the water quality efforts. Doug, I'm going to get you the GEL report. I'm going to put the recycling item on next month's agenda. And I've got an Earth Day discussion for next month's agenda and everybody's photo after this. Anything I missed? All right.
Business, okay, the meeting is adjourned.
All right, everybody.